In Santa Clara, decisions are coming with real season-level weight. The draft is close, the pressure has not eased up, and the signals coming out of the building show a team thinking about protection, depth, and immediate answers to stay right at the top of the NFC. What we're talking about today is not roster trivia. This is franchise direction. And when the 49ers start locking in this kind of evaluation, the fan base feels it right away. You can tell something important is moving. So stay with me, and let's get straight into what's shaping this team right now. One of the biggest things to watch right now is the offensive line, because the 49ers keep digging hard into that group, and now Kadyn Proctor is right in the middle of the conversation. His pre-draft visit to Santa Clara did not happen at some random time, and that alone makes this feel bigger. When a team carrying this much pressure spends real time on a tackle built like this, the natural read is simple. They are seriously thinking about how this offense is going to be protected. And here is what makes this so interesting. Proctor is not just intriguing because he is massive. We are talking about a player who is 6'7", 352 pounds, with long arms and movement skills that make people see a really high ceiling. That changes the whole conversation, because this is not just about grabbing a giant body and hoping it works. This is about evaluating an athlete who, even at that size, still moves in a way that opens the door to more than one plan. And that is exactly why San Francisco could be drawn to him. The 49ers have an immediate need inside, especially at left guard. But they are also staring at a reality nobody can keep pushing off forever. Trent Williams is still a beast, still changes the entire level of the line, but time does not stop for anybody. If the front office is looking at Proctor as someone who can help sooner in one role, while also being groomed as the eventual blindside successor for Brock Purdy, then this becomes a pick that speaks to the present and the future at the same time. Of course, that brings real debate because this roster also has holes in other places, like the defensive line and wide receiver. And that is where this gets heavy. If the Niners are willing to pass over those needs to take an offensive lineman at 27, then they clearly see something bigger here than simple depth. They see an answer. They see protection. They might even see continuity at one of the most delicate spots on the roster. For a team trying to feel dangerous again, getting this read right could be the kind of quiet decision that changes everything later. Now, this is where the conversation takes a different turn, because Mekhi Becton is the kind of name that instantly splits a room. Some people hear it and think upside. Others hear it and think risk, frustration, and another gamble. But when a player like that starts drifting into a more uncertain market, the 49ers always feel like a team worth watching. The reason is simple. San Francisco does not just need locked-in starters. It needs size, strength, competition, and enough margin to survive a long season without losing the physical identity of the offense. And that is exactly where Becton becomes interesting. His run with the Chargers did not give people what they expected. The fit never really clicked. The injuries kept getting in the way, and the lasting impression was just another frustrating chapter in a career that has never really found a straight path. But that is not the whole story. Before that, in Philadelphia, he actually rebuilt value when a lot of people had already moved on. The shift to guard helped, the environment helped, and the football came back with more consistency. He played with power, helped drive the run game, and showed that when he is in the right role, he can still be a really useful player. That matters a lot for the Niners. Because this roster does not necessarily need to find a savior in this part of the market. It needs to find someone who can step into a battle, raise the physical level of the room, and maybe give more than the rest of the league expects. The risk does not disappear just because the idea makes sense. Becton brings an injury history, technical inconsistency, and a recent track record full of interruptions. Nobody can look at that and pretend this is some clean bet. But real contenders also have to know where value lives when the market starts looking away. And when the 49ers are operating at their best, this is exactly where they can be dangerous. Spotting talent that lost public shine, but can still produce inside a hard, organized, demanding system. If his market really cools off, this stops feeling random and starts feeling competitive. Not as some flashy headline move, but as a backroom addition that strengthens one of the most important areas on the roster. And sometimes that is exactly the kind of move that separates a good team from one that is actually built to handle the hits when the season tightens up. There is also a quieter situation building on special teams, and it matters more than people want to admit. That private meeting between Brant Boyer and punter Jack Stonehouse stands out. Not because the name alone is going to fire up the fan base, but because it suggests the 49ers may not feel completely done at this spot, even after bringing in Corliss Waitman. And I am going to say this like a fan who cares about roster priorities. Using a draft pick on a punter right now would be very hard to stomach. Very hard. This team still has more urgent areas to attack, heavier spots in the rotation that need youth, strength, and real impact. So when the report says San Francisco has shown interest in Stonehouse throughout the process and could add another punter through the draft or the undrafted free agent pool, the first reaction is concern. Because one thing is doing homework. Something very different is spending draft capital on it. Stonehouse put up respectable numbers at Syracuse. He had 59 punts, averaged 47 yards per kick, and pinned opponents inside the 20 14 times. There is production there. There is leg talent there. There is something to evaluate. But on the other side, there is already a player under contract, and the comparison with Waitman is not light. Last season, Waitman averaged 45 yards per punt, pinned opponents inside the 20 26 times on 62 attempts, and he punts left-footed, which a lot of coordinators like because the ball comes off differently for returners. So it does not really look like the 49ers are empty at the position. It looks more like Boyer wants full control of the picture before he commits, and honestly, I can understand that. Boyer helped stabilize special teams last year, so he has earned some trust here. What the fan base does not want to see is this team making another serious investment at a special team spot, while more urgent needs are still screaming for attention. If Stonehouse comes in with no draft cost, as a practice squad bet or a camp competition piece, then the conversation feels a lot easier to accept. Then it becomes depth, testing, healthy competition. If it comes through a draft pick, the weight of it changes completely. At the end of the day, this feels like a possible training camp battle more than some major shift in direction. And competition, when it is placed the right way, makes sense. It just cannot cost the Niners a chance to reinforce the areas that really define how high this roster can climb. And then you get to the kind of update that may not sound huge at first, but tells you a lot if you are really paying attention. The visits from Colby Young and Tyler Onyedem to Santa Clara show that the 49ers are still working the edges of this draft board with real intent. They are not just hunting for instant headline names. They are trying to find value in roster spots that could still shift once the board starts moving for real. With Colby Young, the fit shows up fast. The wide receiver room went through major changes this offseason. Mike Evans and Christian Kirk came in, but pieces from last year's structure are gone, like Juwan Jennings and Kendrick Bourne, and the situation around Brandon Ayuk keeps pushing this position into a place of constant attention. So when a day 3 projected receiver ends up on the Niners' radar at this point in the process, it does not feel like a luxury. It feels like awareness. It feels like a team understanding it may still need more size, more competition, and maybe a quiet developmental piece for the back end of the rotation. Young brings solid college production. He had 116 catches, 1,437 yards, and 13 touchdowns over 4 seasons between Miami and Georgia. That does not automatically make him an NFL answer, but it does show experience, volume, and a real presence in major programs. For a franchise that has needed contributions from less hyped names in big moments before, that kind of profile deserves attention. On the other side, Tyler Onyedem fits a logic that is just as easy to understand. The defensive line has already seen movement, including the arrival of Osa Odigizua and last year's investments in Alfred Collins and CJ West. Even with that, this latest visit shows the front office is not satisfied just adding names and moving on. It is checking whether there is still more strength, more rotation, and more consistency available for the interior of the defense. And that is a sign of seriousness. Onyedem posted 138 tackles, 20.5 for loss, 5.5 sacks, plus impact in other areas across 53 games between Iowa State and Texas A&M. That is a resume built on work, snaps, and production spread across the board. At the core, these 2 visits say something important about where the Niners are right now. This team is still hunting for answers in different layers of the roster, without treating the back end of the draft like a formality. And let me throw this to the fan base. If you had to bet on one of these 2 positions to produce a surprise impact faster, wide receiver or defensive tackle, where do you think San Francisco could hit big? If you want my honest view, it is pretty simple. I like what the 49ers are showing right now. Not because every name we talked about today is going to turn into a solution, but because the way this franchise is moving feels like a team that is alert, restless, and fully aware that there is still hard work to do if it wants to get back to the top. To me, that is the best sign of all. San Francisco is not treating this offseason like maintenance. It is treating it like a course correction to keep the window alive. And when a team with this kind of core moves like that, I take it seriously. If you see it the same way, subscribe and turn on the bell.